Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to access an application running on your self-hosted private Kubernetes cluster without using any form of VPN or tunneling, right? So earlier on, we set up a self-hosted Kubernetes cluster, and I'm going to be doing this demo on that cluster. I'm already logged into my AWS account, and I will be navigating to my EC2 dashboard and instances. Let's go to instances. You should see here that my cluster is turned off, okay? I stopped all the instances because I'm not using it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn on all my node except for my bastion host. All right, so let me turn this on. Okay, now this should be coming up soon. And the next thing we need to do is to navigate to the VPC dashboard and create a NAT gateway. Remember, I always tell you to turn off or delete your NAT gateway when you are not using it. That way, you shouldn't get charged for keeping that elastic IP address. All right. So once you are on your VPC dashboard, search for NAT gateways and click on NAT gateway. You should see that I don't have any NAT gateway here. So create NAT gateway. Now give a name of your NAT gateway. I'll call it public NAT gateway. Public NAT, then gateway. All right. So always make sure you create this in your public subnet. Then you need to allocate an elastic IP address to it. So click on create NAT gateway. So let's go to your NAT gateway. So your NAT gateway should be pending. So what we need to do is to go back to our route table. You should see your own private route table, which has two private subnets associated to it, okay? Now click on the route table ID. Now, under destination, the route that is open to the internet is on a black hole status. So what this means is that the last NAT gateway you created got deleted, okay? That's why you're having this error. And all you need to do is to edit route and then leave everything the way you have, and then go select the new NAT gateway that you just created and save the changes. So you should see that your NAT is in active status. This route is in active status. All right, let's go back to our NAT gateways. And these are still in pending state. So let me bring up this architecture diagram. What we're trying to do here is that when you deploy something on this Kubernetes cluster, since it is in a private subnet, there is no way you can access anything that runs on this Kubernetes cluster on your local. Because if you deploy an application that has a web interface, you cannot see it, right? Like if you're testing something locally, and then you containerize it and deploy it to your Kubernetes environment, you can actually see the behavior on your browser. So remember, we can only access our Kubernetes environment when we are on this bastion host, right? We are using a Linux-based bastion host, but as of this time, we are going to change it to Windows because the Linux server we deploy doesn't have a graphical user interface, in other words, GUI, that you can actually use it to, browse, do any other thing. Okay, you can't see anything. So if you actually need to access any application that is installed on your Kubernetes cluster from the web, from your browser, you need some sort of VPN connection. Okay, you need some sort of VPN or a tunneling that will open up that tunnel from your bastion host to your private network. That way you can see whatever is running in your environment. But we're not going to do that setup right now. So what we need to do is to create a Windows-based virtual machine or EC2 instance. That way we can use it to actually see the behavior of our application running in our private Kubernetes cluster. So let's go back to our EC2 dashboard and create a Windows server. So while here, hit on launch instances. Now, I'm going to give a name as Windows Bastion, and I will select a window AMI. Then under instant type, I would be selecting T3 extra large. Use whatever you want, okay? Because I'm using T3 extra large because I don't want to run out of memory. Now, I will use the same key pair I used earlier for all my servers, but the best practice is to use at least one key pair per server, okay? That way you need to separate our concerns, right? So let's go under edit, select your custom VPC. So make sure you select the public subnet, all right? Because we want to deploy this in our public subnet just as our Linux Bastion host, right? Now, and then one thing you need to make sure is enabled is your public IP address, because without that, we are not going to be able to access our Bastion host from our local, okay? Now, I will be using the existing security group we created for Bastion, and just make sure you verify that everything is the way you want and hit on launch instance. Now, let's navigate back to our instant dashboard, or you can click on this instant ID. And then while here, go to security. You should see your security group ID. Click on your security group ID and then do edit inbound rules. Now we need to add one more rule here, all right? We need to add remote desktop protocol rule here because this protocol is needed to connect to a Windows server. If you don't have that, you will not be able to connect to a Windows server. So I always like to limit access to my IP, so that way only me have access to my instances, okay? So let's hit on serve rules. Now let's navigate back to our EC2 dashboard. And in here, you should see that you now have your Windows server in a running state, but still in the initialized status, all right? So let's go and hit on connect and go to remote desktop protocol client. So read through this, and this should give you the details of how to set up your remote desktop protocol locally and connect to your EC2 instance. Now, if you are somebody who is using any workstation like Mac, Windows, Mac or Ubuntu, let's say Linux, let me just say Linux, okay? If you're using any other operating system like for your workstation other than Windows, you need to install this protocol client. That way you'll be able to connect to your Windows server. But I'm using Windows, so I don't need to download this, all right? So what we need to do is to create a password for our Linux server or this user, okay? That's the user, right? So go and hit on get password. So the password you need here is the content of your key pair. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the content of my key pair and paste in there. So let's do cat.ssh, and I'm giving the name of my key pair. You don't want to do this in your production environment because somebody can get hold of your key pair and use it to connect to your EC2 instance. So paste the content here and do decrypt password. That should decrypt it and provide you with this password string. So copy this, save it somewhere because you will need it, okay? So let's save that somewhere. Now, the next thing we need to do is to connect to our bastion host from local. So go ahead and open your RDP, remote desktop protocol, if you are using Windows. So that should open it up for you. Now navigate back to your EC2 dashboard and copy this public DNS, go to your RDP, paste this. You can use the public IP address of your EC2 instance. Now, what was the name? The name is administrator. Paste the administrator name here. Then go grab the password you created earlier on, paste here, and then let's do OK. Then yes. Now you should be connected to your Windows server, right? So this should log you into your Windows server, okay? All right, so now you are in your Windows server. What we need to do is to customize this a little bit, all right? Let's customize this. I want to customize this a little bit. Okay, so let me customize this. I'm bringing this a little bit back here. All right, that way I can still see my my local. Now, one thing we need to do here is to install some certain tools. We need to install Visual Studio Code, Git Bash, and Google Chrome. You don't have to install Google Chrome if you are okay using any other browser. Okay, but as of me, I like to use Chrome. Okay, so continue, start browsing. I don't really care what widget to use. Let me type here google.com. In here, I'll type download Chrome. Let me download Chrome here. Download. So when my download finishes, I'm going to click on that file, open it. Oh, how many times did I open that? Download completed. Okay, let me open this folder. So let me go here and start the initialization. All right. Error. Let me close this and try again. Connecting to the internet. Let's wait for a minute, guys. Okay, that should begin the installation of my Chrome. All right, now that the installation is done, I'm going to click. You can see that it automatically brings up your Chrome browser for you. I'll hit on don't sign in, and I'll set it as my default browser, and then I should be good to go. Okay, let me click out of this. Be patient with me, please. Let me fix some of this. Got it. All right. And what I need to do now is to go back to this guy because I want to close it. I don't want to use H. So let's close H. Close H. Right. Now I should have my Chrome here. All right, guys. So with this, the next thing we need to download is Git Bash. So I want to download Git Bash. Okay, so let's hit on that, download and install. So I will download this binary. Once the package is downloaded, install it. So So hit on next, 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 install it. Okay. Now the next thing I need to look for is Visual Studio Code. Let's install Visual Studio Code. So let me go to this documentation. So let's hit on that. I'm going to go back. So I'm going to click on user installer. That should begin the download for me. So I'll open this. When it is done downloading, open this. Okay, that this is not for Windows, that's for Linux, okay? So, okay. Accept the term of use. So I want to create a desktop icon of it. Right, while our VS Code installation is in progress, let's go to Git Bash and launch Git Bash. Finish, launch. And this should bring our Git Bash here. Okay. So now let's do ls, and we should see that our Git Bash is properly installed with VS Code as well. So let's finish the installation, and this will bring up a new window for VS Code for us. So this is one thing I want to do, okay? I want to open my Visual Studio terminal or a terminal in my Visual Studio. Then I will change my default terminal to the Git Bash. I don't want to use PowerShell because I'll be running some Linux commands on my Git Bash, which cannot be run on PowerShell. Okay, so let's go and select the default browser. So I will select Git Bash as my default browser. So if I click out of this guy and open it up again, then go to terminal, new terminal, you should see that the new terminal should be Git Bash, not PowerShell again. Okay, that just creates, each time you open your Visual Studio Code or a terminal in your Visual Studio Code, the default should be your Git Bash, not PowerShell, right? So, okay, now the next thing we need to do is to copy our key pair from, we need to copy our key pair from local to the bastion host. That way we can then, log into any of these instances. In fact, the control plane, okay, we have to copy our key pair over to the bastion host we just created. That way we can SSH into the bastion, to the control plane, and then copy our kubeconfig file back to the bastion host, because we want to be doing all our cluster configuration, maybe deploy something, query something, get something from our cluster, only when we are on our bastion host, okay? So let's go and do that. So let me pull my Git Bash from my local, and I will still copy this key pair. So let me copy this key pair again. So I'm going to copy my key pair again. All right, copy. So I'll go back to my Windows server. So I'll navigate to .ssh location. That folder doesn't exist, so I'll be creating one. Make directory.ssh. So I'll do it again. So I'll say vi. Let me just say, yes, vi cluster key.ten. Okay. So paste this. Let's save it and quit. Save and quit. ls -la ls -la. Right. We need to change permission on this key page to only read. So shmod 400, then cluster key. Okay, let's do ls-la again. All right, now let's try to connect to our master node and see if we will be able to connect to it. You can see here, guys, that our Linux Bastion host is still stopped, okay, because we're not going to use that. Now let's go to our control plane, go to connect. Let's copy the SSH connection string here, go back to your Windows Bastion host, paste this, and let's test connection. Say yes. All right. Something is wrong. So cluster-key.pem. So what do I have? Cluster-key.pem. All right. Okay. Unknown host. Permission denied. Permission denied. Right. Let me see. So perhaps our key pair has an issue. All right. Right. So let's try to log in again. Let's copy this string again. Go back. Paste this. Yes. Okay, so now we should be in our master node. Okay, so while in the master node, what we need to do is to copy our kubeconfig file from this location, add.kube location config. We should copy it and bring it back to our bastion host. That way we can use it to communicate with our cluster. So I'm going to quit. So in here, I'm going to create a folder called .cube. Okay, so I will navigate to that directory. So I'll create a file called config. So let's paste the content of this in here. There's the content of your config file from your bastion host in here. And then let's save that and quit. All right. So if you run kubectl gate node, say kubectl not found. So let's go install kubectl. Open your Google Chrome or your preferred browser to install kubectl in Windows. So hit on that, go to Kubernetes documentation, and go down to the Windows section of it. You can see the different ways to install kubectl on your window. You can use Chocolately, you can use Scoop, you can use Wingate. So let's try Chocolately, okay? To use this, what you need to do is to open your PowerShell. Let's open PowerShell. PowerShell. Okay, open it as an administrator, and this should bring a PowerShell terminal for you. Paste it. That should install your kubectl for you. Okay. Let's give a second. All right, guys. This fails and it says Choco is not recognized as the name of the CMD LED. So let's go and go back to your terminal, to your Chrome, and type here enable Chocolately on PowerShell. So click on this. So let's open this and go down to where you see now run the following command. Okay, so copy this, go back to your PowerShell terminal, paste that, and hit enter. That should enable Chocolately in your Windows machine. Okay. All right. So once this is done, call back the previous command to install kubectl and hit enter. So that should install the kubectl client on your Windows server. I'm going to say why yes. All right, chocolately is installed. So let's run kubectl. See, okay, kubectl dash version. Let me just run kubectl. Okay, kubectl. Right, so that is installed. Now let me close my PowerShell, go back to Visual Studio, and let's click OK. So it still says kubectl not found. So I'm going to close this window and then open it again. So let's close the whole Visual Studio code and let's try that again. Cube. Right, now that is installed. Now let's do kubectl get node. Okay. Why is this saying this? So let me see. cd.cube. cd.cube. Oh, where did I create my file? All right, so it looks like I created that file in a wrong directory. Okay, let me do that again. Make directory .cube. Let me be here .ssh, and then I have to go back to my control plane and get the kubeconfig file. So let me copy this back to my control plane, and then to my bastion host. Let me try to connect again. Let me bring back my kubeconfig file. Let me copy this back. Come on. Copy this. I'll exit out of this. I'll do vi config. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong place. I might have created that .config file in a wrong directory. Okay. So let's save this and get out of here. Now, let me go back to my .ssh location. I must have created that in here. Yeah, so you can see that the folder is here. So let me remove that. That should be created in our root directory, okay? Not in the, oh geez, what did I do? ls. Okay, ls-l. Remove rf.q. All right, now if I type kubectl, no matter where I am, if I type kubectl get node, you see, I should see my node in the cluster. So no matter where I am in my Windows, okay, I should be able to see my node or do kubectl. Well, I want to set an alias, and there is a way you can set a kubectl alias. You can do a permanent alias or a temporal one. So let me show you how to set up a permanent alias. okay? To do a permanent alias, do vi.bsh-rc, okay? Hit enter. So in here type alias k to be equal kubectl. However you want, you can call whatever you want, okay? So I just want to use k. So I'm going to type now source. I want to source that to make that effective, okay? Now if I type k, you should see that k represent kubectl. So instead of me typing the whole kubectl or kubectl, I can just say k8 node, okay? So that should work for me. All right, so we have downloaded and installed Git Bash, Visual Studio Code, kubectl or kubectl client. So the next thing we need to do is to deploy our sample application to our Kubernetes environment and test access within our Bastion host. So to do that, I'm going to first of all create a directory in my desktop location so that we can use it to save our configuration files. So I'll call it workstation. All right. Now you should see that pops up here. So let me exit out of here. Then right click to that folder. Click on show more options. Then open with code. So that should open Visual Studio Code in that location. So let's navigate to terminal. And you should see that your terminal is open, or your terminal takes you to that location. Now let's go ahead and clone the Kubernetes manifest for our sample application. So go to Git, go to this Git repository. I will put in the link to this repository on the video description. That way you can access it as well, okay? So let me clone this to my local, git clone, paste this. So this should take you to this location, right? So navigate to the repository and then k8 cluster-config. You should see this application folder, and then in it you should see deployment. So let me navigate to that directory. So I'll do pass and learn k8, then application, then ls. You should see that deployment manifest. So let me open that file. In that file, you should see this deployment template and a service template here. So this is actually what we are going to use to test our application. So let me just give you a little bit of explanation on what this manifest are doing. So this is a deployment. A deployment is actually a Kubernetes object that can be used to design and deploy your application. So we are going to deploy this in the namespace called def, and this has this namespace called this name called access-s. We are deploying 2 instances of it, and through what is known as replica set. So that's why we are setting a replicas on that spec here to 2, and then our container actually has this image. So we're going to deploy this application using this image, okay? So the container name is static-web. We are specifying this port to be our container port. One thing you just need to note here is that this port is not generic, okay? It must match the port number or the port ID that you use on your Docker file. Otherwise, it's not going to work, okay? So down here, we are using a service. So whenever you deploy something on Kubernetes, which needs to be accessed on the browser or on the internet, you actually need to use a service to expose that. And don't get me wrong, okay? A service is not just used to, expose an application that must be accessed through the internet. You can use a service to still expose an application that will run only within the Kubernetes environment. That way, another pod can use it to communicate with your main pod. All right. So we are using this service to expose it, and this target pod is what you need to pay attention to. Is must match with this pod. Okay. If it doesn't match to this pod, you will not be able to access your application. Also, the port you specify here is just doesn't matter. You can just put any port number which is within the port range, within the official port range. Okay, you put any port number, that still work for you. Okay, so this service is what we are going to use to expose this application, and it is a clustered IP type service. There are so many types of services. Okay, so we are using a cluster IP type here to expose this application. So let's go ahead and deploy that. So to do that, we will say k apply -f, then deploy, call our deployment manifest, and it says namespace not found. So let's do k create namespace. Then we'll call it dev. Okay. So the namespace dev is created. So let's go ahead and rerun this previous command. So that should create our deployment and the service. So why in namespace dev, let's test and see what is going on. Get port. So we can see that our port are up and running 14 seconds ago. Let's do get services. Do service. Right, our service is running. So how do we know if this service is actually targeting this application? To do that, we need to first of all do get port -o wild, and then do get endpoint, then do get endpoint. Let's do get endpoint. Okay, EP. So you can see that this endpoint is targeting this port ID. And this port ID, if I do Control F here and paste, you should see that this port ID, this IP address is actually the IP address of this port, and this other IP address is actually the IP address of this other port. And they are forwarding traffic to port 80, the port that you specified as your target port. Okay, and this target port I said earlier must match the port on the container. All right, so that is how it works. So if it is not like that, you are not going to be able to access your application on the browser. So how do we access it? We need to use what is called port forwarding. So let's go ahead and do k namespace dev port-forwarding port-forward svc and /. Let's put our service name. Let's copy our service name and paste here, and then specify the port that you want your service to access. So let me see 1001. Okay. What you need to know here is that this port you're actually using here is up to you, right? It's just up to you. And you must be able to have like the admin privileges within your system to open this port. Sometimes it will tell you you don't have permission to run this port, but if you have permission to open that port locally, you should be able to use it. So now I will specify my internal port specified on the service. So let's do 8080 and hit enter. Now that should begin forwarding your traffic from your local through port 1001 to port 8080 and then to your target port, which is your container port as well. So let's copy this, go to your browser, open the next tab, paste this. Let's see if you can access your application. I must have copied something wrong. Okay, so let's remove this entry. Let's remove that, enter that port. You should be able to access your application here. Okay, so this is how you access your application within your Bastion without any VPN setting, no tunneling. All right. Let me then see if we can access this application from our local. So to do that, let's test it from our local and see if we can access it. So let me test this. All right. So you can reach it because this is actually out of our VPC, okay, or network. Our local environment is out of our network. So where I'm trying to access is from here. I can access it from here. But once I am in my Bastion host, which is a newly created Windows server, which we created earlier, is where you can actually access your application. Okay. If I need to be able to access my application within this environment or network, I need to set up a VPN or a tunneling connection. That way, when I create that tunnel, it will open up traffic to my cloud environment. Okay. So guys, this is how this setup is done. So please like this video, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this, right? Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.